Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tang Men based on novel. So let's start. Juzi looked up into the sky and muttered to herself, "Perhaps I will give you a present the next time we meet. But I can't give that to you." Eh? Huo Yuhao stared at her suspiciously. He didn't understand what she was talking about. "Why aren't you leaving?" Juzi asked again furiously. Huo Yuhao shook his head gently and said, "Farewell. If we meet again, I wish that we won't have to be enemies. I truly hope that you will still be my senior that I studied with back then, and the same senior who helped treat my injuries. I'm leaving, Juzi, and you must take care of yourself. If the day comes that we finally don't have to fight to the death on the battlefield, I will try my best to protect you and fulfill your wishes." Huo Yuhao stared at her deeply before he rose into the sky and flew far into the distance. Juzi stomped her foot heavily as he watched him disappear over the horizon. "Ah!" she began to shout indignantly, and her entire being seemed to descend into hysteria. She managed to calm herself down after a moment as she said angrily, Juzi, you say that his heart is soft, but isn't yours as well? Why can't you do anything to him? You know very well that is possibly the hardest enemy to deal with, and you should kill him. You will no longer have any worries if he is dead, and you will be able to do what you want with nothing in your way." She was still talking to herself when circles of fire-red figures gradually appeared 100 meters around her. Four enormous soul tools slowly rose as a red shadow swiftly came to Juzi's side. It was the Fire Phoenix Doluor, Luan Feng. "Why didn't you give you the order, Commander?" Luan Feng frowned as she asked Juzi. Juzi turned towards her, and her eyes slowly turned moist as she suddenly plunged into Luan Feng's arms and sobbed uncontrollably. Luan Feng was momentarily stunned, and then she suddenly understood something as she heaved a faint sigh and hugged Juzi as she shook her head exasperatedly. Huo Yuhao was still hovering in midair in the distance as he watched everything that was happening on the ground, and a forced smile appeared on his face. "Juzi, did you know that I would rather you have given the order to make a move against me? If that were the case, perhaps I would have been able to harden my heart to deal with you in the future. But because of your softness, my heart cannot be hardened to do anything to you." Juzi was so scheming. How could he be tricked once again? How could he not have considered that she could have arranged an ambush? Only his spiritual form was there instead of his original body, and if Juzi did give the order to attack him, his spiritual form had many ways to escape. Huo Yuhao was a lot more careful, because of the mistake that he had made previously. But Juzi didn't make a move, and he couldn't say anything heartless either. They had clashed and sparks flew, but everything had finally dissolved into a heartbreaking farewell. Juzi was angry with herself, but wasn't Huo Yuhao also hating himself for having a soft heart? Juzi left, and she took her trusted subjects with her. The extreme north grew calm once more, and all that was left were the marks of excavation. Huo Yuhao returned to where the Ice Bear King was resting, and he sat down beside him with his legs crossed as he started to meditate. He quickly calmed himself down, as he took this opportunity to cultivate in the extreme north's bitter cold. 3 days quickly passed, and the Ice Bear King's wounds were fully stabilized. Huo Yuhao finally returned to his journey with the Ice Bear King once more, and they went straight for Dragon City. He still had to rendezvous with Nan Chocho, who was waiting for him there. Dragon City wasn't affected by the Sun-Moon Empire at all, and everything was as it was before, though the city was still being penetrated by soul tools and technology. The Sun-Moon Empire's soul tools were still snaking their way through the Heavenly Soul Empire's aristocrats and citizens' way of life. Huo Yuhao took the Ice Bear King, who was in human form, back to the cloth store. Nan Chocho was already very worried from waiting, and she was immediately overjoyed when he returned. "You still know to come back. You've been gone for so many days, but you didn't send a message at all." Nan Chocho planted her hands on her waist as she shouted angrily at Huo Yuhao. Huo Yuhao placed his index finger on his lips as he lowered his voice and explained. "I was in the extreme north over the past few days, so how could I have sent a message back to you? There's someone else here, calm down." Only now did Nan Chocho realize that a round fellow had followed Huo Yuhao inside. This person's waist, head, and torso were all circular, and his egg-like tummy entered the courtyard first before she saw his fat face, which was all smiles. "Who's this?" Nan Chocho asked suspiciously. The Ice Bear King didn't wait for Huo Yuhao to introduce him, and he took a few quick steps forward as he said to Nan Chocho respectfully, "You must be grandmother." "Greetings, grandmother. I am Little Bai." Grandmother." Nan Chocho stared at him with slack jaws and widened eyes. Huo Yuhao felt his eyes go black, and he couldn't help but slap the Ice Bear King on the head. "She's not your grandmother. Don't spout nonsense." The Ice Bear King withdrew his head like a turtle and said aggrievedly, "Grandfather, this lady is quite pretty, so I thought she was my grandmother." "So, she's not." Nan Chocho stared at Little Bai's enormous torso before she turned towards Huo Yuhao and said, Wait. What is happening, exactly? You have to explain this to me. You've been gone for half a month, and you bring back a fat grandson back with you." Huo Yuhao answered with a forced smile. "He's my distant relative, and I am his senior." He could only explain everything like that. Otherwise, Nan Chocho would probably hammer him with a lot more questions, with that immensely curious personality of hers. Distant relative. Nan Chocho glanced at Little Bai a few times suspiciously. She felt that this fatty wasn't simple at all. Huo Yuhao lowered his voice and said, "Chocho, I ran into quite a big problem this time. I managed to figure out what the army was here for. They were here to excavate rare metals at the extreme north's borders, and they have already discovered where the veins of rare metals are. They have retreated, but I cannot guarantee that they won't return in the future. We have to relay this information back as soon as possible, so that the Academy can be prepared for response." Nan Chocho asked, "Then what about the matter that eldest senior brother entrusted to us? Are we not going?" "Of course, that still has to be done," Huo Yuhao said exasperatedly. "That's the reason why we have to split up. I'll write a letter, and you'll deliver it to eldest senior brother so that he can pass it to elder Xian personally. I will complete the task that eldest senior brother has given us." Nan Chocho's eyebrows rose as she retorted, "HMPH. I knew it, you just aren't willing to do anything with me, and you're always looking for ways to chase me away." Huo Yuhao forced a laugh and said, "Shit, isn't this happening because the plans can't keep up with what's happening? This matter is too important. Furthermore, I'll use a container to store a piece of divine ice crystal, and you'll bring that back for Teacher Xian, so that he can inspect it and decide whether it's suitable for crafting soul tools, and what kinds of soul tools the crystal is appropriate for. There's something in it for you too." There was quite a large amount of the crystal, and everything came from the Earth Dragon sect. Nan Chocho would definitely get a piece of whatever soul tool they could craft out of it. Of course, those divine ice crystals wouldn't have their ice spirits. That wasn't because Huo Yuhao was stingy, but because those without ultimate ice martial souls couldn't use ice spirits at all. Divine ice crystals without ice spirits were just top-tier rare metals, and soul tools could still be made from them through certain methods. Nan Chocho's expression became a little better after she heard his words. "I'll follow you this time, then. But remember, you owe me." "What do I owe you?" Huo Yuhao asked. Nan Chocho grunted and said, "I don't care. You just owe me." "All right." Huo Yuhao wrote the letter before he passed a piece of divine ice crystal to Nan Chocho, so that she could take them back. He didn't give her all of it, because it wasn't safe, as she would be holding too many precious items with her. Huo Yuhao escorted Nan Chocho out of Dragon City to express how apologetic he was. He watched her depart before he turned around and went deep into the Heavenly Soul Empire with the Ice Bear King, in the direction of the Setting Sun Forest. The Setting Sun Forest wasn't far from the Heavenly Soul Empire's capital, Heaven Do City. Huo Yuhao couldn't help but heave a sigh inside when he thought about Heaven Do City, because that was where the Tang sect had originated. But now, the city was in the Sun Moon Empire's hands, and he had to help the Heavenly Soul Empire retake this city in the future, if that was possible. Huo Yuhao had already decided how he was going to proceed. He had to visit the setting sun forest to check if Big Mao and Second Mao were all right, and if they were fine, then all was well. Then he would have to scout around the Heavenly Soul Empire's territories. He was by himself, and it was thus a lot easier for him to conduct reconnaissance duties of any kind. He wanted to see the Sun-Moon Empire's deployments, and he also wanted to find out how many of the Holy Ghost Church's men were inside the Heavenly Soul Empire. He also wanted to search for traces of Tang Ya and Ma Xiaodao. This process would probably take quite a long time, and that was one of the reasons why he didn't want to take Nan Qiuqiu along. It was a lot easier for him to escape alone, but things would be different if Nan Qiuqiu was with him. Huo Yuhao relied on his powerful spiritual detection as he flew through the air. Even though he ran into some of the Sun-Moon Empire's aerial surveillance soul tools, he managed to evade them cleverly. Huo Yuhao was concerned about the Ice Bear King's injuries, so he deliberately controlled his flying speed. They arrived outside Heaven Do City after 2 days. Heaven Do City's defenses were a lot tighter compared to Dragon City. Huo Yuhao could see from far away that there were many aerial surveillance soul tools above the city. The Sun-Moon Empire's flag swayed in the wind on the city wall, and there were many soldiers patrolling and standing guard. He couldn't see what was happening inside the city clearly, but he didn't dare to go any closer from the air. Huo Yuhao stared at Heaven Do City, and he thought that the Sun-Moon Empire had to have many soldiers stationed inside, judging from the situation. Heaven Do City was the Heavenly Soul Empire's capital city, and it was one of the most renowned and ancient cities on the continent. The Heavenly Soul Empire must have launched continuous assaults or ambushes from their forces in the shadows, and that was probably the reason why the defenses around Heaven Do City were so tight. If those reclusive sects were the ones making moves, Heaven Do City was evidently their best target. There have to be powerful soul masters here, since there are so many soldiers standing guard. The Holy Ghost Church probably has men here too, and I'll take a look once I'm back from the setting sun forest. Huo Yuhao turned around and went straight for the setting sun forest. He couldn't help but wonder how Princess Wei Na and the others from the body sect were doing as he flew. The last time they had met at Radiant City, they were still so powerful, but they were now citizens who had lost their country. The setting sun forest was very close to Heaven Do City, and Huo Yuhao could soon see the dense forest from a distance. There were faint flickers of brilliant colors deep in the forest. Of course, those were fatal. Be careful, little Bai. This forest has a very toxic miasma inside. Huo Yuhao warned the Ice Bear King beside him. The Ice Bear King chuckled and said, "Rest assured, grandfather. Poison is what I'm least afraid of. Besides poisons like that belonging to the Ice Empress, the soul beasts of the extreme north rely on our extremely low temperatures to resist most kinds of strong poisons. It's all good, let's go." That's true. My ultimate ice isn't afraid of poison, and the Ice Bear King is much stronger than I am. The Snow Empress has truly found a good helper for me, and everything is a lot safer with this fellow around. This was the reason why Huo Yuhao felt confident investigating Heaven Do City earlier today. Huo Yuhao took the Ice Bear King into the setting sun forest, and he went down the same familiar path as the Ice Bear King followed beside him. Huo Yuhao was very different from when he first came here back then. He was still extremely weak back then, and he didn't understand anything about what was happening here. Now, he was a formidable soul sage who was almost a soul Doluo. His soul power had been increasing rapidly, or even exponentially, after continuously absorbing the manifold mysterious ice essence every day over the past few days. Huo Yuhao could even feel that he was close to that bottleneck, and that discovery actually surprised him. Huo Yuhao's soul power was only at rank 74 when he left Shrek City. A little more than a month had gone by, but he could already feel that he was pushing towards the next bottleneck. That cultivation speed was simply too quick. Of course, one of the most important reasons was that he had absorbed the manifold mysterious ice essence, and the Snow Empress was there to guide him. In addition to him forming his soul core, his soul power cultivation speed was greatly increased. His soul core continuously helped him increase his soul power even when he was not cultivating. The ice fire yin-yang well quickly came into view. Huo Yuhao unleashed his snowy dance of ultimate ice to expel the miasma, as he took little by into the valley. A man and a bear descended from the sky right into the valley. However, Huo Yuhao was immediately taken aback when they entered the valley. The Icefire Yin-Yang well was still a paradise on Earth the last time he was here, but many things were different now. There were many different plants growing densely inside the valley around the Icefire Yin-Yang well, but everything clearly looked a lot more chaotic. Many plants on the periphery had disappeared, and some areas even revealed empty earth. Only the immortal herbs and plants in the inner circles appeared as they were. Furthermore, such a place that was filled with life did seem a little disarrayed. Some of the immortal herbs in the inner circle seemed like they had shifted around. What happened? Did someone come inside? Huo Yuhao continued to think as he walked towards the Icefire Yin-Yang well. You're here. He wasn't even near the Icefire Yin-Yang well when a crying voice rang out. The Ice Bear King was startled as he turned around vigilantly. He could see a large pinkish flower that was swaying its head around, and it was clearly emanating grievous emotions. How are you, Yu? The large pinkish flower was the delicate Silk Immortal, and Huo Yuhao hurriedly greeted her. The delicate Silk Immortal was clearly full of resentment. No, I'm not good at all. Ever since you guys sent in those two bastards, our plants haven't been well. Ah? Huo Yuhao was momentarily stunned. Only then did he realize that the mess around the Icefire Yin-Yang well was related to Big Mao and Second Mao. What's wrong, Yu? Have Big Mao and Second Mao caused you trouble? Huo Yuhao asked a little anxiously. They have caused more than trouble. The delicate Silk Immortal answered sorrowfully, if not for the fact that some of us still have some strength, we would probably have become meals in their bellies. They are not bears, they are two pigs. Look at the outer layers. Originally, there were all kinds of herbs and plants that were thousands of years old, but they have eaten them all. They are also very cunning, and have considered eating us more than once. We didn't dare to kill them because of you. The home that we have relied on for subsistence has become so tattered. If you didn't come, we might have risked everything we have to deal with them, and that's because they have become far too powerful. If we don't deal with them soon, they might just eat every single one of us. Huo Yuhao didn't expect Big Mao and Second Mao to cause so much trouble. He hurriedly apologized, sorry. I didn't know they would be like that. I'm here to take them away this time, don't you worry. Yu heaved a sigh of relief, and many immortal herbs and plants released similar emotions around them. They had to be wary of those two fellows eating them every day, and living a life like that was truly difficult. This place seems very fun. That water is interesting. The Ice Bear King didn't pay attention to Huo Yuhao and Yu's conversation. Instead, his attention was focused on the extreme chill ice spring. He exclaimed happily as he spoke, and he strode towards it. Huo Yuhao was caught off guard as Little Bai leapt into the air, and went right down towards the extreme chill ice spring. The delicate Silk Immortal's voice froze, and it was clearly a little stunned. Is this human retarded? Why is he jumping straight into the ice spring? Is your friend committing suicide, Huo Yuhao? Don't worry about him. He'll be fine. Huo Yuhao said a little exasperatedly. Kaplunk. The Ice Bear King plopped right into the extreme chill ice ring, and quickly disappeared into the water. Yu, where are Big Mao and Second Mao? Let me take them away. Huo Yuhao asked the delicate Silk Immortal. The delicate Silk Immortal's enormous flower head gestured to one side and said, they're over there. Those two fellows are either eating or sleeping to digest some herbs. They are fast asleep. Their digestive abilities are too strong, they eat every day, and digest every day, and they absorb everything especially quickly. Go take a look. Take them away, as fast you can, we can't stand them for a minute longer. All right. Calm down. I'll just take them away. Huo Yuhao felt very guilty that Big Mao and Second Mao had caused so much harm to them. This place was a place that the Tang sect's ancestor, Tang San, had been to before, after all. He couldn't just let this place be ruined. He swiftly went in the direction that Huo Yuhao had pointed out, and the herbs and plants opened a path for him as they let him walk as he liked. Big Mao and Second Mao were lying down in the outer layer. There were quite a few plants and herbs beside them, and there was even some residue around the corners of Big Mao's mouth. Criminals wouldn't want to be caught, but these two fellows didn't care at all. However, Huo Yuhao was astonished when he saw them. These two fellows were changing far too quickly. The dark golden terraclaw bear's appetite was incredible, and Huo Yuhao had already known that when they were still in the Tang sect. The food that they had to gather to feed them was equivalent to the volume that everyone in the Tang sect ate every day. However, they were less than 3 meters tall when they left the Tang sect. Less than a year had gone by, but Big Mao and Second Mao were at least 7 meters tall now. Even though they were still quite a distance away from becoming fully-grown dark golden terraclaw bears, their growth was just too quick. Their current size and build meant they were at least dark golden terraclaw bears with 1,000 years of cultivation. A dark golden terraclaw bear's strength couldn't be measured by the number of cultivating years that normal soul beasts were measured by. 1,000-year dark golden terraclaw bears were feared by even 10,000-year soul beasts, just like the first dark golden terraclaw bear that Huo Yuhao had encountered back then. Seems like they've been causing too much destruction, but they are growing very quickly. Huo Yuhao didn't know that back when Bei Bei sent Big Mao and Second Mao into this place, Huo Yuhao and the other immortal herbs had allowed them to stay because of Huo Yuhao. That was because the valley where the Icefire Yin-Yang well was located was very large, and all sorts of herbs such as ginseng and huangqi could be seen everywhere. They were all very nutritious and beneficial herbs. From the immortal herbs' perspective, those two bears could eat for a few hundred years, and they still wouldn't finish eating those things. But what they didn't know was that the dark golden terraclaw bear's appetite couldn't be judged from their size. They possessed far stronger digestive abilities than normal living beings, and they had eaten non-stop ever since they had arrived. They were still eating normal food back at the Tang sect, and they digested normal food normally. Even though they still ate a lot back then, their appetite wasn't that outrageous. But ever since they arrived, the herbs and plants in this place were considered rare and exotic herbs, and every single species took their form from condensing large amounts of the spiritual qi of heaven and earth. The dark golden terraclaw bears were very good at absorbing the spiritual qi of heaven and earth. Big Mao and Second Mao would eat gluttonously every day. Then they would sleep, and digest everything as they slept before eating gluttonously again. Humans would have exploded from the large amounts of nutrients if they ate so many herbs every day. However, the dark golden terraclaw bears were enormous, and had a frightening capacity to absorb all the vital energies of heaven and earth into their bodies. They ate quickly, and digested quickly as well. This was the reason why Huo Yuhao came across such a sight. Just as the delicate silk immortal had said, if some more time were to pass, and Big Mao and Second Mao became sufficiently powerful, they would probably make a move on those immortal herbs. Those immortal herbs were plant-type soul beasts, and they weren't adept in battle. On the other hand, dark golden terraclaw bears were almost the most frightening soul beasts, and battle was their forte. Their ancestors in the ancient times were probably individuals that could match up to the giant dragon. Huo Yuhao stared at these two exasperatedly, but he was feeling happy inside. Big Mao and Second Mao's growth undoubtedly added a lot of strength to the Tang sect once more. This feels so good, just so good. Grandfather, I don't want to leave. It's too comfortable here. The Ice Bear King's voice rang out from the extreme chill ice spring. Huo Yuhao snapped his head around. The Ice Bear King was swimming joyously and carefreely within the extreme ice chill spring in his original form, and his body was emanating icy blue light. He did seem like he was enjoying himself a lot. Yu was rendered speechless, and the other immortal herbs descended into silence. They had thought Big Mao and Second Mao were large enough, but they truly paled in comparison to this one in front of them. Furthermore, the Ice Bear King, who was still swimming happily, didn't mask his aura at all, and the frightening ice-type undulations caused the blazing delicate apricot, who was on the blazing sunspring's side, to quiver uncontrollably. The two little bears had already given them enough trouble. If this extra-large bear had a go, he probably wouldn't even need a few days to devour every single plant in this place. All the plants in this place feared for their safety, and nobody dared to make a sound. They were afraid to infuriate Huo Yuhao, or that enormous bear. Huo Yuhao cursed under his breath, as he activated his spectral demiplane, and he hurled Big Mao and Second Mao with one hand each into the demiplane. He erected a border inside the plane to protect the bears from being harmed by the undead outside, before he arrived beside the extreme chill ice spring. He was naturally unafraid of the extreme chill ice spring at his current cultivation. The temperature around the extreme chill ice spring was similar to that around the manifold mysterious ice cavern, and was probably higher than the cavern's inner areas. The salient feature of this place was that the mouth of the spring coexisted with the blazing sun spring. Grandfather, my injuries are healing very quickly in this place. But I'm a little hungry. Every single plant around the ice-fire yin-yang well almost shriveled when they heard that he was hungry. This time, their entire bodies were trembling. Huo Yuhao almost laughed out loud when he saw how they were reacting. He could clearly remember, back when he was first here, how high and mighty these plants were. I'll find something for you to eat when we're out. Are you saying that the extreme chill ice spring helps you with your recovery? The Ice Bear King immediately nodded seriously and said, this place is filled with much origin energy of heaven and earth, and it's just so comfortable. I don't want to leave anymore. Why don't you let me stay here, grandfather, and you can come get me after you finish your business? Huo Yuhao hesitated. No. Yu immediately cried out in agony. I beg you, Huo Yuhao, take him away. I will give you whatever you want, even if what you want is more than your ancestor Tang San's limits. You can have whatever you want. We will cooperate as long as you don't let him hurt us. Please take him away. Otherwise, we will be doomed. Huo Yuhao was all smiles when he heard the flower's words and said, how ashamed I am, I have already received so much help from you guys. How can I get anything more? The delicate silk immortal didn't even hesitate. No, this isn't something that you want. We are giving things to you of our own will. Every single one of us will give you something. Besides the blue-silver emperor that we can't do anything about, the things we can give you should be sufficient for you to accomplish a lot of things. I just wish that you will leave immediately after taking those things. The delicate silk immortal shook its flower head gently as it spoke, and the delicate silk immortal pill that Huo Yuhao had seen before flew out. The pinkish pill emanated an alluring fragrance as it drifted towards Huo Yuhao. Huo Yuhao caught it subconsciously. The pill was lukewarm, and it shone with pinkish hues in his hands. Its gentle aroma gave him an incredibly refreshing and comfortable feeling. Yu was a little depressed. Is that enough? I was about to take the bear away without asking anything from you guys. However, he's injured, and I'll stay here with him for 2 days before we leave. Huo Yuhao spoke the truth. Even though the immortal herbs and plants here had been hostile to him before, he did get quite a lot of help from this place. He didn't harbor any resentment or hatred at all towards these plants. Furthermore, his ancestor Tang San had left this place behind. How could he let the Ice Bear King cause destruction here? But Yu didn't feel that way. The flower immediately thought Huo Yuhao was being sarcastic when it heard his words, and it immediately used the plant's language to communicate with the other plants. It didn't take long before an entire pile of all kinds of good stuff that immortal plants produced appeared in front of Huo Yuhao. For instance, the blazing delicate apricot's blazing rubber was in that stack. The blazing delicate apricot was evidently afraid of Huo Yuhao holding a grudge against it, and it almost took out every single bit of its blazing rubber. The other plants made their own contributions, and almost everything was the best that they could produce. Huo Yuhao was completely taken aback. He didn't expect that the destruction that Big Mao and Second Mao had caused would lead to something like this. He didn't intend to take anything from those plants, but if the plants were so generous and giving everything out of their own free will, he would do himself wrong by not accepting their gifts. Thus, Huo Yuhao acted according to the various records inside the poison scripture that Tang San had left behind, and he used various methods to keep all these absolutely precious items and essences. There wasn't any burden on his conscience. After all, he hadn't harmed the plants here. Essences were precious, but the many plants that had more than 100,000 years of cultivation around the icefire yin-yang, well, that was like a cornucopia wouldn't take long to recover after cultivating for a period of time. Yu and the others were most afraid that Huo Yuhao would destroy everything here to get what he wanted. Of course, Huo Yuhao understood that many of these plants were afraid of the Snow Empress and the Ice Bear King, who was happily swimming in the water. His individual strength wasn't enough to threaten these plants. Huo Yuhao sincerely expressed his gratitude to the immortal herb's generous gifts, and the plants looked on eagerly as he pulled the Ice Bear King away. The Ice Bear King did recover a lot more quickly in this place, but the plants weren't assured at all. Huo Yuhao had taken gifts from them, and he would be ashamed if he dallied any longer. The Ice Bear King wouldn't need too long to recover outside anyway. Huo Yuhao still wanted to laugh out loud as he left the setting sun forest. Fortune has shone upon me and I couldn't even stop it from happening. Oh, my ancestor, I didn't ask them for anything. They wanted to give everything to me of their own will. Huo Yuhao touched his face and thought, am I being a little shameless? However, those precious essences and treasures are useless if they remain in that place. In my hands, at least I can save people and help people. Huo Yuhao was confident that with the delicate silk immortal pill, even if he couldn't completely heal Tang Yue, he could still suppress the evil soul power within her body to a certain extent. It's time to visit Heaven Do City to take a look. A dash of coldness flickered beneath Huo Yuhao's eyes. The Sun Moon Empire, and the Holy Ghost Church, no matter what, I will not let your plans succeed. The journey from the setting sun forest to Heaven Do City wasn't far, but he was extra careful. He landed when he was 50 kilometers from Heaven Do City, and changed into regular clothes that normal citizens wore. He also used imitation to readjust his appearance and facial features before he traveled towards Heaven Do City. As for the Ice Bear King, his appearance was unfamiliar in the first place. Even though he was a little fatter than he should be, he was just some fatty if he deliberately concealed his aura. They arrived outside Heaven Do City's city wall in the evening. Dusk was falling over the city as the sunset glow crept over the horizon. Blazing red clouds viewed from outside the city seemed to blanket the entire city in a layer of reddish-golden hues, and everything was dazzling and gorgeous. Huo Yuhao and the Ice Bear King lined up at the gate, and went through inspection. Where are you from, and what is your business in Heaven Do City? There was a team of 50 soldiers at the gate. 20 were responsible for guarding the gate, while 30 others were responsible for interrogations and inspections. Huo Yuhao had a wide arsenal of reasons and whatnot, and he invented a name for himself and the Ice Bear King as they smoked through the gates. The Sun Moon Empire's soldiers didn't deliberately cause any trouble for them. They were holding soul power detectors in their hands, and they could whether someone was a soul master by sweeping over that individual. If someone wasn't a soul master, asking a few questions was sufficient before the soldiers would let that person through. Soul power detectors were useful against typical soul masters, but it was completely useless against someone like Huo Yuhao, who was adept at concealing himself. As for the Ice Bear King, his ability to conceal himself was possibly even stronger than Huo Yuhao's, and he was more direct. The Ice Bear King withdrew his soul power into his soul core, and the thick layer of fat on his body severed any kind of undulations from the soul power detectors. Heaven Do City was still bustling and flourishing. Huo Yuhao used his spiritual power to sweep around after entering the city, and he could still discover the marks of battle. That was especially so around the city wall. Evidently, both parties had undergone an epic battle when the Sun Moon Empire invaded Heaven Do City. Heaven Do City is where the Tang sect originated from. Huo Yuhao couldn't help but clench his fists tightly. Don't you worry, teacher Xiao Yue. I'll help you take back our place of origin in the future, no matter what. Bei Bei and Tang Yue were considered family. Huo Yuhao wouldn't have been able to enter Shrek Academy if not for them, and even if he fused with the Skydream Iceworm, he couldn't possibly have accomplished what he had today. Therefore, he had gratitude for the two of them that came from deep within his heart. The Holy Ghost Church had captured Tang Ya, and she had become the evil sect's sacred lady. Besides Bei Bei, he was the one that felt the most pain. Furthermore, there was still Ma Xiaodao, who he saw as an elder sister. This video will end here.